were discussing about recovery and remedial management. We started a process of recovery management we discussed, and uh, can you see the slides? Can you see the
Yes.
slides?
Yes, sir.
It's moving, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So we start with the recovery management and discussed what is recovery procedure, why we need recovery, urgency in recovery, today's consent. And we started with finding out the process, supervision, monitoring, and follow up. And from that, we came to find out the warning symptoms. Last week we did that, and I sent the uploaded the handout today. So warning symptoms, and after that we had to find out from the warning symptoms what are the causes for failure, why the customer failed, by the reasons, and find a solution for that. We have a number of options now to solve the problem of the customer. Why customer is not paying, the reasons, and to solve that problem. I was always insisting that customer's problem is our problem. Our NPA is not our problem. It's because it's the customer's problem. So if it's to solve our NPA problem, non-performing advance problem of the institutions, banks and finance institutions, we have to solve the customer's problem. So what are the options available for solving this problem? One of the best options is rehabilitation of sick advances. Try to rehabilitate the customer and to put the customer back to business. In other words, if it's something gone wrong, some problem with the customer, try to solve the customer and to restart the business. That's called rehabilitation. Restart the business. Okay, so we find this option if the market is viable. That means customer's product can be sold in the market. Market is viable, is positive. Viability is positive. Customers are willing to come forward for to do the business, continue the business, to solve the problem. He'll cooperate with us. He should cooperate with us to find a solution for his problem and rescue him from the problem. Then there should be some collateral should be available, right? That these three are viable. This viability analysis, VNC model, we call this is viability analysis model. Viability analysis, when the customer viable, market viable, collateral viable, all viabilities are positive, then we can go for what we call rehabilitation process. Rehabilitation is to revive a sick industry or a project or a business to operate viably. Put the customer back to business to run viably, right? Without getting back to that type of a problem situation. So this is the best option available for a organization, bank or its lending institution. Best option, right? We call this a win-win situation. Why? Customers solve the problem. We also try to solve our problem, both parties. On the first session of recovery management, we discussed this part. Discussed why the going for negotiate with the customer, try to reschedule or restructure a business turnaround. These are three methodologies can be applied. It will be help us. It's a win-win situation. Both parties will benefit. What is rescheduling? Mostly the rescheduling is misunderstood by the organization, banks specifically. Rescheduling means granting more time or period to pay back the facility, which should be matched with the cash flow or the income with the same terms and conditions already agreed upon. Rescheduling means we are not changing the structure of the facility or the terms and conditions of the facility. Only we allow customer to pay little time extended. That means to reduce the loan installment to match his cash flow. Right? Now, this is very important to understand because why it is happening. Sometimes we may have not considered the cash flow of the customer projections correctly. The future cash flow of the customer at the time of granting a facility, we may have not paid certain attention to certain important areas. So we can rectify those things and see whether the cash flow is there. So there's the cash flow and the income. We have to match with that, right? And uh, always we consider the cash flow is the repayment source. Cash flow is the repayment source. Therefore, we look at the cash flow and adjust the loan installment according to the cash flow. Sometimes you may find that when you do adjustment, the loan installment may come reduced. And what you have already agreed, it can come down. It has to be reduced. When it comes to reduce, we have to increase the period to allocate. Now this is the rescheduling is that part. We increase the period to match the cash flow. So whenever a facility is defaulted due to certain reasons which can be rectified, we have to rectify it and put it back to business. Then reschedule means with anything, nothing else, doing only extending the period, right? Let's see why we do this, why we make these problems, or why we make this error at the time of granting facilities. What are the problems we are having? One of the problems is underfinancing. Customer may default due to underfinancing. That means we have not granted the facilities according to the customer's need. We're always talking about need-based finance. Understand the customer need, structure a facility according to the customer need. Amount-wise, period-wise, then the change in the need base, it is according to the customer need. Then the problem of defaulting can be arrested. So the underfinancing is mostly we find because the weak evaluation. Our evaluation criteria are not correct or incorrect or inadequate data. So on the surface of it, whatever customer given in the application, we just what do you call box inside that application. We are going not beyond that. Sometimes incorrect. We are not verifying the information given by the customer to what extent it is justifiable. Sometimes it may not be justifiable. Customer sometimes exaggerate certain figures to show you a rosy picture. For example, we take a personal loan. Customer's evaluation, the application form, he have mentioned about his expenses, his income, his expense statement. Now when you analyze this, to see the surplus, that surplus will allow us to get the repayment. Sometimes customer may have not given information about his actual expenditure, actual expenses. What are those things? So it will happen in the time to come. Recovery, the cash flow is not sufficient to pay back. So this is one of the problems. Or we are incorrectly calculated income. Right? It is business customer or even a personal customer. Sometimes we may find we have some sort of a misunderstanding about the concept. So therefore, we sometimes at the time of granting the facility, we do certain adjustment that is not justifiable in the time to come. Okay, so we'll get some example in educate data. The customer information not given properly. For example, he has given his expenditure, a certain amount of expenditure, so he can match showing a surplus cash to repayment. But in the information you may find, he is having about 3 children, schooling children. So what is the schooling expenditure? What are other expenses? Whether they have taken into consideration this part. Sometimes those are hidden. So as a banker, when you are evaluating customer's proposal, go into the details. It is very important. We have to rectify it. Correct position, rectify it. One is incorrect information about the income. Or the we here, sometimes we may work out incorrectly. For example, when an employed customer, how much you can recover as a loan installment? How much you can recover? For the salaried employee, how much you can recover? It's only 40%, no? Right? And this 40% where is appear? From where you got this information? It is in the Shop and Office Act. According to the Shop and Office Act, employee should be given take-home salary of 40% of the gross salary. That means total deduction should not exceed 60%. So mostly when you defaulted, what we see, this has been incorrectly interpreted. What it says in the Shop and Office Act is loan installment should not exceed 40% of the gross salary. Loan installment should not exceed 40% of the gross salary. And total deduction from the salary should not exceed 60%. Clear? So therefore, if you are not work out correctly, we may mislead and find that customer may not be able to pay back the loan. Other incorrect information for a salaried employee, what type of income you can consider for loan repayment? What is salary? What are the components you can take into consideration? There are certain income in the salary statement we will not consider as repayment source. You not consider. Which is not permanent. any income or allowance or whatever it is not a permanent thing. Then we cannot take into consideration. Right? Very carefully have to understand. So for example, salaried employee, basic salary we can take. CLA, cost of living allowance, we can take into consideration. Those are permanent. Then married allowance, that can be taken into consideration. So permanent. What are any incentives given for the employee? Any incentives? That is incentive for coming to work, incentive for working late, overtime payment. All these are not permanent income. It's not permanent income. Supposing that customer shifted to another place or gone to another employment, where that income may not be there. So only you have to depend on this basic income, salary, CLA, and merit allowance. All other income cannot be considered. One of the cases I came across when analyzing the defaulted cases, the customer has disclosed that he is getting a bonus of so much amount. 2 months salary as bonus as at end of the year. As at the end of the year, bonus of is getting 2 months salary as bonus. Now what the bank has done, taken the bonus, divided into 12, add to the salary. Now what's happening? So that bonus is of course income, but it is not regular. It's not a regular income. So any income not regular, we cannot consider for evaluation. So this is one of the problems when we do analyzing. We are not doing it correctly. Similarly, business customer, mostly we try to find out customers' tax payments, tax receipts. Not necessary. What we want is the customers to declare the income for tax purposes. Whether paying income tax or not is not a matter for us. Then the income has been declared for tax purposes. That's all. That certificate, declaration certificate, only we need. But any customer paying income tax, take the receipts and find out the the statutory, what is statutory income. We can work out on that basis. Okay. That's the first problem is the undefined error. Second problem is wrong period. How long we are granting a facility for a customer? What is the criteria for deciding the loan period? Standard is a standard in the banks or financial institution. Sometimes some banks have 3 years, some bank for general loan, some are given 5 years. Right? Now, what is this period? How it has been established in the banks? Period is one of the delegated authority of the manager. Period is the delegated authority of the manager of the bank. You can run maximum up to this period. If you have exceeded that fund, then you have no authority. Simple example. We are granting a temporary order for a customer. How long? What is the period you are giving? 30 days. Or 14 days, depending on some banks, 14 days, some banks 30 days. Some banks, depending on the manager's grade, so chief manager, senior manager, he may having sometimes 45 days or 60 days. That depends. So this period is a technical one. Technical is the delegated authority. Similarly, any loan, any credit facility, any loan also can be granted for a certain period only. Beyond that, manager has no authority. So what we do? We have to send that proposal to higher management for approval. So the higher management have the authority. Now, what the problem is, what we are seeing, most of the facilities going bad. Without sending to higher management, we try to reduce the facility to match the cash flow income of the customer. For example, if the customer asking for 1 million proposal facility, customer need is for 1 million. Right? If you grant the 1 million facility, we may find he had to pay a 45,000 installment a month. Right? If the cash flow is not sufficient to pay 45,000, we have got three options. First option is customer having not sufficient income to pay back the loan, repayment capacity is not there, so we can reject it. At the time of granting the facility, we already rejected that because the customer does not have sufficient cash flow to pay back the loan installment. But what we do, we reduce the loan amount. For example, is 1,750,000. If the customer has an income of 35,000, to match the 35,000, reduce the loan amount, principal amount. So what will happen? The customer need is 1 million. We are granting facilities 750,000. Then the balance 250,000 customer borrowing from the street lenders. Customer borrowing from the street lenders. So which loan is he servicing first? Our loan or borrow from the street lenders? So at the time of grant itself, it's a NPA facility because he doesn't have ability to pay back the loan. One of the biggest mistakes we do now practically in the banks. We try to reduce the required loan amount to meet the loan installment. Customer will be able to pay back because he is borrowing from other sources to overcome his financial difficulties. That's one of the biggest problems. The second option is we are reducing that is not, it will lead to a NPA, non-performance. Customer will default definitely. He is not able to pay. But the best option or the third option is match the loan installment. For example, the loan installment 45,000. Okay, if you increase the repayment period, for example, if you are giving for 5 years, if you increase for 7 years, you can match the cash flow. Therefore, whatever, if the proposal is strong, we are satisfied with the proposal, the customer need is verified, clearly identified, verified, you can put a proposal to higher management, which I have the Delhi authority, to increase the period and reduce the loan installment. So this is what we mostly we have to do, match the cash flow. Sometimes we may don't have a Delhi authority, so we have to send a proposal to higher management. Right? Now here, practically there are certain problems at this junction. Number one is, whenever customer is defaulted, the bank managers, branch managers, delegate authority is withdrawn to entertain that customer. For customer defaulted facility, any facility, you have no authority to entertain that customer any further. So any proposal you have to submit to the higher management to get the approval. This is one of the obstacles we are having. We have no legal authority to do that. Secondly, whenever we try to get the higher approval, our proposal, our memorandum not complete, is incomplete. Or we are not giving the facts and figures to make a decision at to the approving authority. We have to submit a proposal to convince the higher management about the strength of the facility. Just giving the guarantee. What is the right? So that is that part of the role. The most of the managers does not have. Just jot down certain figures or something information and send the paper. What happened? Always it will be returned back by the management or asking for more further information. So it will drag the time. When the time is dragged, there are two types of issues are coming up. Number one, customer getting dissatisfied. Customer getting dissatisfied about our services. Secondly, customer may think that the manager does not have paying attention to his needs. So a negative, what you call idea or a negative bad image will be created. Bad image will be created. On the other side, whenever your proposal is going up and returning back, twice or thrice or sometimes 4 or 5 times, what is the credibility of you, of the manager? What the management think about you? Your ability, your performance, yeah? Your performance will be not evaluated by your higher management as a good manager. So these are the practical issues coming with this when you're doing a wrong thing. So therefore, at the first time itself, running the facility, you have to rectify this. If it's been something made wrong, okay, you can rectify it later on. So you build up that information, collect information, and submit the paper accordingly, and giving the information why you propose this to be rescheduled. Definitely, higher management will accept it. The second problem is we go for rescheduling. We grant a facility without matching the cash flow of the lower period. Then not matching with the cash flow we discussed that only thing, that's mostly coming up. Then working capital inadequacy. Always we are talking about whenever structuring a facility, 3 components we discussed. Capital need, medium-term capital need, and the working capital need. Right? Working capital is needed to run the business. It should be adequate. It should be adequately provided by the banks. So we have to calculate carefully the need of working capital. We did a session last time, how to calculate working capital for industry, for a business organization, service organization. We discussed this earlier, how to calculate correctly. So the capital inadequacy, working capital inadequacy will collapse the business. Business cannot be run any further. Why the reason capital inadequacy is arising? It may be the customer side, right? Customer has not managed the working capital. Now this call in the financial management, customer has to manage his finance. So our job is to see whether the customer is managing the working capital. If any need, okay, let's bank go ahead to grant a facility. In the business will run, capital, when the working capital is there, customer can generate profits. The customer can generate profits, cash flow is generated, the recovery is established. Right? So at the time of granting, these things has to be looked into. In rescheduling also, we do the same thing. When the customer, we find the problem of the customer, I told always, look at the problem, where the problem, who have created the problem. It's from the customer or the bank. Then you rectify it. Next problem is the cost escalation. We need rescheduling, we need cost escalation. Now, most of the instances we see our customer need analysis, we are not taking into consideration the time taken for the completing the project. For example, if a customer is making a proposal to do a project, how long it will take to complete the project? During this period, definitely, due to the inflation, a general increase of cost escalation is you would see, generally. Right? So at the time of granting a facility, we have to make allowance for this cost escalation. Granting a facility, we have to make allowance for this cost escalation. Take into consideration property loan, housing loan. What is how do you calculate a housing loan? 90% of the BOQ. Or 85% or 90% of the BOQ certified, depending on bank's policy. 90%, 45, 80% of the cost are reimbursed by the bank, staggered basis. We have been releasing these funds. Normally, constructions, then the import trade. The import trade, what happened? Always cost may be escalated because the exchange rate fluctuation. In import-export trade, you may find the cost may be changed due to the foreign exchange fluctuation. So you have to keep allowance. Either keep allowance in the loan, or you can take an alternative solution. For example, import trade, we have got import-export trade. To any deviation, we have got derivatives. We use derivatives, caps and collars. Right? In advance, we come to take a rate and to overcome this cost escalation problem. So to meet that. Similarly, other activities also we have looked into that. Right? So whenever cost escalated, customer's problem is we cannot complete the project. So project is half stopped. When the project is not completed, half is stopped, our loan is going bad, NPA. Why? It will not generate any income. Customers having a problem, his finance has been blocked, it's not generating any income. So we have to pump further money. You would have seen most of the customers ongoing basis asking for facilities. One facility is given, after 1 year asking for another facility, after 6 months asking for another facility, either by a permanent facility or a temporary facilities, end up with disasters. Why can't we structure a facility taking into consideration cost escalation? Now, taking the example, cost of construction. Cost of construction, okay, we give 90%, but we may have to have 20 to 25% allowance, right? Need is, for example, 1 million, 1.25 million. You propose your loan facility should be given 1.25 million for that customer, and all the documents has to be prepared for that amount, but you are releasing only 85% or 90% of the BOQ value. So balance will be remaining as and when customer need it, you can use that, release that, right? Now it will solve a lot of problems. Now you don't have to get approval from the higher management for that, because already you got the approval and security also got the option. Only thing to you, release whenever needed, only if needed only. Right? If they are needed only, we release. Otherwise, they are not, you should not give the money. So customers to pay interest whatever you using, not for the amount, loan amount. So there won't be a problem. So it's benefit to the customer as well as the bank. So these are the components how to do the giving time for the cost scale. And only infusion of capital stake by stakeholders. This also comes under restructuring. So this is what called rescheduling. Simply giving more time for the customers to pay back his facility. It's called rescheduling. Nothing else. Right? With the same terms and conditions, again, terms and conditions will be remaining same. It will not be changed. Okay. Right. Next is restructuring of facilities. Restructure, Prativyuhagata kirim. Change the entire structure. Restructuring means to change the entire study structure in order to strengthen the recovery program. So look at the problem, why the customer has defaulted, why the reason, how to rectify it. Sometimes you may find the market is viable, custom is okay, wallet is available, so we give for restructuring the best option. What are the methods or components of restructuring? First one is infusion of new capital, specifically working capital. When you propose, when a custom proposal was made, at the time of customer made the proposal, we have not made much attention to the working capital need. That means we have not worked out the working capital need how much. Sometimes customer may not have worked out properly. We have some idea about we need so much of for buying raw materials and pay for the our services, labor and others. That is not all. We discussed earlier how to calculate the working capital need, the permanent working capital, revolving working capital. If the capital is not sufficient, capital has to be infused, new capital has to be pumped in. Now there are two components. One is we ask the customer to pump further money. Ask customer to increase his equity. That's one way of increasing capital. But most instances, customer come to this stage, he does not have money to pump or issue shares and get money from the public. He's not in a position to do that. In such circumstances, bank has to give support. So either equity capital or loan capital. Equity capital or loan capital. New capital has to be pumped in to run the business effectively. Basically, carefully you have to understand this. Working capital need has to be see that we are not over-financing. We are not financing for unproductive assets. Matagayani? We are not financing for bad debts. We are not financing for obsolete goods. Okay, these are practical issues. So when your customer need for working capital, see the structure of working capital, and then you calculate the need correctly. Okay, second one is extending the period. Extending the period is, we already discussed about the restructuring, so rescheduling. Say, rescheduling is the second one. So in the restructuring proposal, infusion of new capital, extending the period, also there may be. And third comes to securitizing weak facilities. Securitizing weak facilities. Now, if the customer having TOD, letter of guarantees, and guarantee loans, those are we consider as weak facilities. No security, no collateral. Specifically, personal loan, the personal guarantees and temporary overdrafts are weak facility where no security, no collateral, no enforceable collateral available. So whenever going for restructuring, these weak facilities has to be secured. Right? So when you packaging for the restructuring package, include these items, which are unsecured facilities, also to the loan structuring part, and entire loan package has to be securitized. That means your collateral has to be cover all these areas, all these facilities. Convert those items, convert to collateral based facilities. Okay, this is called another factor we are looking at the time of restructure. Whatever facilities weak, that means no collateral, or collateral cannot be enforced. In the time of restructuring, we include all these things to security under the security coverage, under security umbrella. Right. Next item is capitalizing of unpaid interest. Sorry, what we do for interest. Now, at the time of customer default, there interest has been accumulated. Interest has been accumulated, not paid. Right? Interest will be accumulated. So, what is the options available for a banker to recover this interest? We have three options. We have three options to recover the interest. First one is capitalizing the unpaid interest. That means add the interest into capital loan account. That means outstanding interest component, right, accrued interest component, add to the capital and amortize over the period under rescheduling period. That's the best option. So you recover whatever security, what call interest, but they are not paid by the customer. Okay, but customer will not may not happy about this. He may not agree for this proposal. Why? He had to pay interest on interest. When you capitalize the interest, that will be part of the capital. Then customer to pay interest to that also. Customer may not come for that proposal unless otherwise a small amount, or we can a small amount, negligible amount, depending on the loan size. We can ask the customer to do that. Second option is to recover the loan interest-free, the interest, grant a facility called interest-free loan. Granting an interest-free loan. For example, even if a restructuring facility, a certain amount of interest is outstanding, it has to be accrued. So to accrued part, normally we allow the customer to pay in installment. As interest-free, grant a loan facility, pay in installment. Okay. grantor the facility, right, to recover the interest. To recover the interest and convert into a loan. That interest component convert into loan, and it is interest free. Normally we are not charging interest, and it will be maximum period will be 1 to 6 months or 1 year. That 12 installment, equal installments, or 6 installment, depending on the customer's repayment ability, we recover the interest. This option is best, very good. Customer will come down to agreement sometime, right? So interest-free loans means normally in practice, interest, we are not granting any facility without interest, right? We add nominal interest to the interest component, and for example 5% or 6%, right? Nominal interest add to the interest component, and that will be divided by the number of installments, 6 or 12 installments. So it will be basic cost has been already covered, right? So the interest-free loans having to recover the interest. Now, during the recovery of interest-free loan, maybe 6 months or 1 year, right? We are not going to recover the original loan. If the customer does not have cash flow, sufficiently cash flow, we are not recovering the capital amount, and we give a grace period for this interest-free loan period. For example, if you grant an interest-free loan for 12 months, 12 months grace period given for repayment of the original loan, and only interest will be recovered during this 12 months or 1 year period. These are the methods of doing restructuring. So to recover the interest, either capitalizing at the customer agreeable, okay. Otherwise, go for granting an interest-free loan, collected installment basis. During that period, we are not recovering the capital, the original loan. Only the interest will be serviced. So it will push we recover our interest, right? We are not preferring loss. It's benefit to us. The third option is if the customer unable to pay, his cash flow is not strong, and the accrued interest is going to be a burden to him, then we may go for the option of interest waiver, right? Interest waiver, it's not most of the defaulters will ask for this facility. Only a couple of dollars capital mangavanda. So most of the times we have seen from the proposals coming from the branches that branches are proposing interest waivers for the customers. What's the position of the bank to grant interest waiver? What instance we can consider? Number one is, I told earlier, if the customer having accrued interest is going to be a burden to him, to pay to restructure is a burden, an obstacle for restructuring proposal, then we may consider for interest waiver, either part or completely. The part of interest or completely may be waived. That is that option. When you come to that option, in practical, how we are going to apply that? There are certain conditions. When you have enter waivers. Now, what is the position of the bank to grant this facility, which is defaulted by the customer? To grant the facility to the customer, bank have borrowed from our depositors. You know that we are depositors' money is lent back to the customers. So we have already paid interest to the depositors. We have already paid interest to the depositors. That means we have already incurred a cost. We have already got a cost. Do we going to forego that cost which already incurred without recovering? You have to think twice. You have to think twice before accepting a proposal for interest waiver. That means two things. One is we have already incurred a cost. We are going to forego that interest, and the interest income we are going to forego. The cost we have to forego, interest we have to forego. Thirdly, future income we have to forego. This interest component we recover, invest back and get income, that will also be had to forego. So three types of income we are losing when you come to interest waivers. So bank has to very carefully work out for this option. Right? Number one, when you interest waivers, why we should go for interest waivers? How you should work out interest waivers? Third, whenever you grant an interest waiver for a customer, okay, it should be a terminal benefit. What do you mean by terminal benefit? After pay back entire loan amount only, this component of interest waiver will be applied, not at the time of restructuring. After full amount has been recovered, the loan balance will be recovered. Thereafter only we apply for this interest waiver, not in advance. Customer may take this interest waiver in advance and again may default. So we are not giving this option in advance. We give this option only at the time of after completing settlement. Right? It's called terminal benefit. Interest waiver always should go as a terminal benefit. Okay. Next important factor here is whenever you grant a facility and interest waiver and restructure a facility and recover, right? That will be appearing in the crib. The interest waiver will be appearing in the crib. Right? In other words, you cannot entertain that customer for a fresh facility, right, without settling the interest rate amount or part of that. And after settling entire thing, if the customer needed further facilities, we can entertain that customer if he pay off that interest or part of that to be confirmed. Okay. Next important factor is, therefore, whenever it comes to interest waivers, whenever comes for interest waiver, we already got a cost. Therefore, at least minimum, we have to recover the cost of funds. When it comes to interest waiver, minimum to recover the cost of funds. At least cost of funds you have to recover. That means that's what you have to go for proportionate. Not complete waiver, a part waiver. You recover. So you forego that also, that cost also, that as a last resort. If the customer does not have ability to pay or his cash flow is completely weak, it's going to be obstacle for him, then only we go for that interest rate. So it is not merely giving a customer that we are going to waive off interest. No. Carefully you have to evaluate the circumstances and what's the impact to the bank and work it out. Under restructuring, the final one is take part in management. Whenever we infuse new capital, defaulted customer, in restructuring thing goes on, when we appoint give a new facility for the bank, we have the right to nominate somebody from the bank for the management as a director. Bank has a right to appoint somebody to the management as a director to look after our interest. The board meetings and all, to look after bank's interest, somebody can be appointed as in the management. So it's called take part in the management. And this is very important concept where it is when we discuss next session that parade. This part is there also. Whenever facility is defaulted with a property mortgage, the customer is not doing well, we can take the management into our hand and run the business. Okay, so this the restructuring facilities. So the rehabilitation, basically two things we discussed. Rehabilitation consists of rescheduling, restructuring. Right. Third one is okay. We'll discuss this and go for that. Before we go for the business turnarounds, right now, according to central bank regulations, directives, this credit facilities can be reclassified. Reclassified, I mean, when you part, same to the NPA section we discussed last session, non-performing, and we had to make a provision. Okay. Whenever customer settles the facility, it can be reversed back to the regular section. Now, earlier we were allowed, whenever come to settlement, transfer to regular section. But now central bank has given the directions that from non-performing to performing section transferring, there are two categories. Transferring non-performing to performing section if settles the loan. If interest and outstanding balance fully settled, right? No concession, nothing is given. Interest as well as outstanding balance completely settled by the customer, immediately you can transfer to the performing section. Immediately you can transfer to the performing section. Right. If rescheduled or restructured, it cannot be transferred immediately to the regular section. A certain time period has given to see the performance of the payment of the customer. Only after satisfactory performance during the period specified after the first payment is made. Now, this is mentioned here for specially mentioned categories. For facilities in the special mention category, right? That is 90 to 180 days. There we can restructure it or reschedule it. Then after 90 days, after first payment is made, after 90 days only we can transfer back to normal section, regular section. Substandard and doubtful category after 180 days. Substandard and doubtful categories after 180 days we can transfer into back to normal section. If the facility was in the loss section, that is over 18 months in arrears, then it is after 360 days. After repayment, loan, installment, 1 year, only you can allow to transfer to classified section. So these regulations we have to follow whenever. The benefit of this reclassification is, right? So when you transfer back to the normal section, the provision you made also automatically transfer into profit and loss account and your profit will be increased. That's a benefit. Okay, right. So that's first part of this rescheduling restructuring. Let's go for the other session. Okay. So third one is we are going for business turnarounds. Right? Business. What is business turnaround? This is something complex situations of restructuring. Business turnarounds are is a complex situation of businesses where large businesses, large businesses, when it defaulted or fallen down, what is the impact of that? Right? There's a problem with the business of the customer. Always we look, there's a problem with the customer. To solve that problem is our recovery plan. Some consider that it is better to continue the failed business and try to recover. So that's what we discuss. Any business fail, try to help them to come back to the normal position and to try to recover. That's the best option. But some want to fail business to be killed. This is the what you call the Shylock principle. Some banks or financial institutions, if a business is failed, write the assets and properties and recover whatever amount outstanding, right? Not consider all the business. Some banks not bothered about the customer's business. We have to look into in a social angle. In a social angle. If a business is failed, closed down, it has a big impact on the economy, on the society. Let's see later what is the impact on that. Therefore, to surviving a sick industry or sick business, it will help not only the customer but to entire country. Right? But not all are willing to pay for the attempt to recover the business. We have to consider that. Do businesses continue forever without faith? How many businesses that exist today are more than 200 years? 100 years? 50, 25 years old? In Sri Lanka, if you see how many businesses are running more than 200 years in Sri Lanka? Our own businesses, not the British companies who are established in Sri Lanka. Our own businesses. I don't think we find even one. But 100 to 150, there are some of businesses still. You can count from the fingers of hand. What the angle garden can do. Parents say, attack. 120 years, 8 years old. Parents. Don Carol is 150. Right? Very few companies are running in the country for 100 years. Now, Singer, John Keels, and other companies, so it's a British companies. Leo Brothers of Unilever, those are foreign companies which have established branches in Sri Lanka. Our own companies, Sri Lankan companies, are very few. We may find certain businesses running over 50 years. Melbourne 62 years, DSI 75 years, Harishchandra 75 years. Likewise, right? Most of the businesses are 25 to 50. Lifespan is 25 to 50. Within that period, after that, most of the businesses are getting collapsed. Why the reason? It's like we call industrial life cycle. It's like any human being, we are the same, no? It is rise and fall of the customer's interest. We start off life as a toddler, a youngster, growing up, youth, then coming matured gradually, and from here, next step is RIP. So it's like you can see it's a graph, it's a graphical. Even a human being have a life cycle. After some time, collapse. So now this is, if you put in a graphical form, this is the time period on the left. This is the time period. How long it will take? Sometimes It can go for more than 100 years or 60 years or 50 years for individual person. Sometimes maybe at this stage even business may collapse. So why the reasons? That's what we have to understand as a businessman. Now this is called product life cycle or the industry life cycle. Sales, volume of sales, and the life period. Right? On the X angle sales, and this angle shows the production life cycle. So any product have a life cycle. Any business has a life cycle. Now what we have to as bankers to understand is at which position or which stage the customer is. Which stage the customer is. Right? Therefore, we carefully analyze the situation, then our recovery plan will be getting success. Now, when I first turn description one shows the introduction period. When any business starts, it takes slowly increasing the profits. Sales increases, profit increases. Now, this is called introductory period. Whenever you grant a facility for a new customer, new business, this period you may not be able to recover the facility. This period you can't recover. Why? So always either start still not generated profit or profits are marginal. Second stage is the growth stage. Very rapidly increasing sales. It's called growth stage. Now this is the ideal situation for lending. If any business or any industry, if you show in this level, improving very fast, increasing the sales very fast, then that is a growth stage. That customer able to pay back. Now, length of the period, the growth period is depending on the industry and their management decision-making pattern. Okay. The third stage is called maturity stage. Now it has come to the peak. From here onward, gradually decreasing the growth rate and come to this point. On the peak, it is maturity. Once you come to this point, start declining. If you look at a human being, young මේ තරුණ කාලේ 10 11 අවුරුදු 10 විතර වෙනකම් මේ තත්ත්වය. 10 ඉඳලා 25 30 විතර වෙනකම් තමයි මේ තත්ත්වය. Improving, increasing. ඊයෙන් පස්සේ maturity 35 40 වෙනකොට පටන් ගන්නවා declining. Cholesterol, heart attack, liver බොරක හැමදේම හැස්පේන්න තියෙනවා. ඔක්කොම පටන් ගන්නේ after come to the peak. It was gradually decreasing. Even a business, you find that it has come to this point and then comes to starting declining. Customers' demand is declining. Customer demand is declining. That's why all may be a reason. Sales have been declining. Or alternative products, substitute products, may have come to the business market. So product will be dying, gradually dying. Then the fourth stage will be the declining stage. Fourth stage is the declining stage. So decline like ultimately business with that. Now the prudent businessman, we discussed a little while ago, there are certain businesses running for more than 100 years, 150 years, 200 years. Why the reason? What the secret behind that? The secret is when the businessman comes to know about that day, comes to this peak time, this maturity peak time, they change the product. They change the product or change industry, some changes. And once you change this, it is again increasing. Without going down, then again increasing, going up. Now this is called, we call re-engineering process. Right? When a business comes to know that it is come to the peak time, till if it has a strategy to change to the market need, then that company can survive. That's called engineering process. As a banker, it is very important for us to understand this position. Okay, if we lend at this position, we cannot recover. So we have to give a grace period. This is the period we can recover easily. So guarding facility at this same time is very comfortable for us. Customer is very comfortable because cash flow is very high. It's a rapid increase. But if you come to this stage, gradually repayment getting dragged and getting declined. So if you got, most of the customers are coming to us at this point. Why? Customer facing financial difficulties. This point only they are coming to us. So if you grant facility at this point, what will happen? He also decline with the customer. So the best time is this. Or else, if you analyze the customer have a strategy to change his business, then you may invest. Okay, you can go for it because the customer will increase his business gradually with that. The cycle will going on continuously. Now, how to find out this? What are the techniques available for a banker to find out this? This is why we needed the financial analysis. Financial analysis for 5 years minimum to analyze. You can see the trend. If the financial ratios are increasing, the growth rate is there. So that means that customer in the growing area. Year by year, day by day, his income, sales, recover, what you call other profitability is increasing, mean that in the growth area. This area you may find the ratios are coming to stagnation. 2-3 years, not changing much. මෙතනින් එහාට එනකොට ලොකු වෙනසක් ඇති වෙන්නේ නැහැ ratios වල. growth rate එක බොහොම slow down වෙනවා. growth එකක් තියෙනවා, but it's not that fast. It is gradually coming down. So we have to understand that the business has come to maturity. Top එක peak එක ලැබිලා ඊට පස්සේ what will happen? Started declining. So ratios ටික minus වෙගෙන යනවා. growth එක trend එක negative. May period capital loans soon, definitely it will default. But customer need that this time we have help. Okay, we can help the customer if you have a strategy to develop. Okay, example how the business has been doing this for some time. A famous example is Perra and Sons. Perra and Sons is a පෙර බක්කරේ මේ පාන් හද බැලුව ස්ට්‍රීට් එක හදපු පාන් ගෙඩියමද පිටිය තියන ඔළුවේ ගොනු පාන් ගෙඩියමද දැන් තාමත් හදන්නේ එහෙමනම් පෙරසන්සේ වල මොකක් කරා පෙරසන්සේගේ ජෙනරේෂන් මේ හතරවෙනි ජෙනරේෂන් එක they change the pattern everything to according to the market need, customer need. That's why they are surviving and expanding. You may find most of the tourist hotels, jewelry shops, every 5 years facelift එකක් දෙනවානේ. අවුරුදු 5කට සැරයක් සම්පූර්ණ change කරන ඉස්සරහ facelift එකක් කරනවා. That's the engineering process. The engineering process එක කොටසක් තමයි. It is needed. Right? අලුත් දේවල් අලුත් විදියට වෙනස් කරලා අලුත් generation එක ඕන විදිහට වෙනස් කරනවා. Take the case of Lux. Lux is කොච්චර වයසද? Lux සබන් ගැලද 130 years. More than that, 130 years already. හරි. එතකොට මේ ලක්ස් කැල්ල ගත්තොතින් කාලෙන් කාලට වෙනස් වෙනවා. I don't know if you observe that. එක කාලයකට කස්ටමර් ඩිමාන්ඩ් එක මොන පැත්තද තියෙන්නේ? ඒ පැත්තට යනවා ඩයිවර්ට් වෙනවා ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එක. To keep the market steady. මතකයි අපි පුංචි කාලේ මං අවුරුදු 4 5 වගේ කාලේ මට පොරේ we going for a grandma's place. ආන්ට් අපේ නැන්දලා එහෙම මේ ෆිල්ම් ෆෙයාර් සංග්‍රහයම ගෙනලා තියෙන දවසේ ඉන්නේ. ගෙදර තියෙන පරණ සංග්‍රහය. ඒවල පෙරවල් බලන එක තමයි අපේ හොබි එක පුංචි කාලේ. නිවාඩුවට ගියාම. So those days මීනා කුමාරි කාලේ තියෙන ලක්ස්. නිලියගේ සබන් ලක්ස් කියන්නේ. ඒ සබන්ම දැන් තියෙන්නේ. නෑ කාලෙන් කාලට වෙනස් වෙනවා. කාලෙන් කාලට ඒකේ ෆ්‍රැක්ටර්ස් එක චේන්ජ් වෙනවා. රැපර් එක චේන්ජ් වෙනවා. ෂේප් එක චේන්ජ් කරනවා. අද තියෙන ලක්ස් කැටේට එන්න ලොකු ඩෙවලොපර්ස් තෝගයක් කළා. මට මතකයි දැන් අවුරුදු 20කට 25කට before 25 years. ඒ මාකට් සෙග්මන්ටේෂන් එක කරා ලක්ස් එක. ලක්ස් වර්ග පහක් මාකට් එකට දැම්මා. right? සුදු පාට ලක්ස්, රෝස පාට ලක්ස්, කොළ පාට ලක්ස්, then golden color ලක්ස් හතරක්. දැන් මේ products හතර to put into the market, they did some advertisements. TV එකේම advertisement දැම්මා. දැන් මේ advertisement කොහොමද දැම්මේ? market segmentation එක ගෙනා කොහොමද? දැන් සුදු පාට ලක්ස්. ඒතර වීණා ජයකොළි වගේ අවුරුදු 60 තරුණියෝ තමයි ලක්ෂම වෙන්න ගාන්නේ කිරිපාල කිරිසාර ලක්ස්. ඒ නිලියන්ගේ සබන්. ඊළඟට ගීතා අපේ ගීතනග ගීතා කුමාරසිංහ ගෑවේ කොළපාට ශාකසාර අඩංගු ලක්ස්. මගේ සමට අගනීය එයා ගන්නේ. යසෝදා විමල ධර්ම බොහොම යම් තරුණ කාලේ තරුණ ආපාලුස වගේ එයා ගන්නේ රෝස පාට සබ ලක්ස්. සුසිනිදු රෝස පාට සබ ලක්ස් තමයි අපිට. එතන මේ සංගීත විරණ just came to the field. සංගීත විරණ ආපාලුස හැටියෙම. එයා ගන්නේ මීපැණි දාපු ලක්ස්. ඒක ගන්නම හිතෙන්නේ. See how the Unilever use this to market these products, different age segments they select same product එක තමයි but differentiate කරා. ඊට පස්සේ ආවා මේ සීරීස් එක ඉවරලා ඊට පස්සේ මේ මට මතකයි හිතාවේ pearl right මුතු අඩංගු pearl දාල්පු. ඊට පස්සේ නිල්මානෙල් මල් ආවා. දැන් නිලියන්ගේ සබන් නේ දැන් රුයත්යන්ගේ සබන්. දැන් බ්‍රෝඩ් කරලා customer base එක. Early it was only for the actresses. නිලියන්ගේ සබන්. දැන් ඒක රුයත්යන්ගේ සබන්. It's a broad. Now this is how the customer try to keep the market steady. So what this is learning for us is if our customers have such a strategy, right? Our recovery will they won't be defaulted or even defaulted. We may be able to recover because that customer having a strategy. ඒකයි අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ අපිට බලන්න. අපි බලමු තවත් කේස් එකක් අරගෙන ලෝකේ වැඩිම කාලයක් පවත්වන බිස්නස් එක මොකද්ද? The longest lifetime එකක් තියෙන බිස්නස් එක මොකද්ද? ඊළඟට ගිනස් රෙකෝඩ් එකක් තියෙනවා ඒකේ. මෑතකදී it was in the YouTube එක මම දැක්කේ. Longest life cycle in business look. It has a lifetime of 2,462 years. How there are my side. This is the 42nd generation running that business successfully. Japan Latina bamboo restaurant. What is the strategy behind? The world famous. A traditionally ඔක්කොම මේ විදිහට මේන්ටේන් කරගෙන today's market එක capture කරගන්න. So maybe so we have learned from these things. This will help us to understand the customer's business when you go for a complex situation of restructuring. This is a complex restructuring. It's called business turnarounds. Okay, right. What are the issues in the failures? Now, this is mostly the corporate segment. Number one, the stakeholders fail to identify the potential reasons for failure and they fail to differentiate between the acceptable but uncontrollable factors and unacceptable but controllable factors. තවත් issue එකක් තමයි Asian countries වල විශේෂ especially we find that third generation එකෙන් පස්සේ business එකක් ගෙනියන්න බෑ. First generation එක ගෙනාවා, second generation okay, third generation එකේදී fail වෙනවා. සමහර business ආරම්භ British ලේලන්ට් එක තියෙනවද? නෑ British ලේලන්ට් ඉන්දියාවල අශෝක ලේලන්ට් දුවනවා. right? ඒ වගේ identify කරන්න ඕන controllable factors, uncontrollable factors මොනවද කියලා. So the stakeholders fail to understand reasons for failure. Right? Acceptable but controllable factors. And then unacceptable but controllable factors. වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන් factors තියෙනවා. පිළිගත් factors තියෙනවා. So this will change the lifetime of the business. For example, acceptable but control කරන්න බැරි factors මොනවාද? Product range uncontrolled factor. For example, then කවුරු පාවිච්චි කරනද safety races, film rolls පාවිච්චි කරනවද? A business has failed. You're right. So those are uncontrollable factors to understand. Second issue is businesses that can be recovered with potential business to all stakeholders are allowed to fail. If bank is only considering recovery of their facility, liquidating the assets, killing the business, then all other stakeholders of the business getting not be getting benefited. All are losers. Who are the stakeholders of business? Right? Business stakeholder, I put it in singular. Right? Financial institutions. Stakeholders of business, financial institutions. Then the owners. Owners. Then the customers who are benefited from that business. Employees. And also families of the employees. Then the creditors who are dealing with the business. Then the government getting the tax and tax benefits. To economical growth, this will be help to growth of the economy. Then the suppliers. All these are stakeholders of a business. If business is failed and closed, not only the owner, not only the bank, all others are getting infected. So therefore, saving a large business is a benefit to all institutions, all the stakeholders. That's what we have to understand. So therefore, it is very important. Right. Recently, very recent one about this defaulted businesses in Sri Lanka, large businesses, large corporates which have been closed down for certain malpractices, certain mismanagement, try to survive. Today it's become the government policy to specifically govern large industries to revive and restart the businesses. Now, if you see what do you call sugar factory, Hingurala sugar factory. It was closed down for some time back, the last by the Premadasa government. It was given to one of the traders, a failed, and those closed down. So who are the affected parties? Not only the government, loan institutions have got loans, suppliers to the entire economy because you had to import all the sugar because of that. Right? And then the employees, they lost suppliers, cultivators for sugarcane. After reviving their business recently, with LOLC and Melker together started, so all these people are getting benefited. This is the important thing. So what is the latest?
Excuse me, sir.
What is right? Okay, we'll go ahead. Who are the stakeholders of our business? This slide was also there because it was in the other single language. Who are the benefited institutions from a business, or the stakeholders, financial institutions, owners, customers, employees and their families, creditors, banks and creditors, the government who are collecting taxes, and local government institutions, the entire economy, also suppliers to the business are getting affected. So therefore, any business going to collapse, moving, helping to revive the business is very important. So I just have here. And what is the latest about the recent business which are going to revive? Which have been closed down for some time back, and a large industry, corporate level. That is paper corporation, right? Now we are importing paper, news, all the requirements stationery. Yeah, we could have manufactured in Sri Lanka. So we have got all the raw materials, basic pulp and all these things available. It is being mostly not used properly. So the paper corporation at Malachene, the government tried to restart the business. So this is important. What do you call the business turnaround? This is a business turnaround principle. Finding partners, the private sector to join partners, government and the privately. Likewise, what Hingurala Sugar Corporation did, Kalloya. So that is shared by the government and the private sector. Likewise, there are large industries in Sri Lanka which have been started in 1970s, which have been closed down due to the open economy policies. Now we are facing difficulties for import cost. So it will help the economy to when you revive these industries, right? So the process of liquidation itself will destroy and take a big share of the value of, and reduce the value of available to key stakeholders. Whenever we try to liquidate the asset, that means property mortgage, we sell the property, we cannot fetch the market price. We try to sell at the cost, and the benefit is not going to the stakeholders. Benefit is not going to stakeholders. Other issue is stakeholders do not agree, hence recovery is difficult. Whatever your proposal, bank brings, it is very difficult to convince the customers. Or whatever customer brings, it's difficult to convince the bankers. So both parties having two different views of this restructuring process and come to default. Other issue is when should the business to be protected? Yes or no? If so, who would bear the cost of protecting the business? Stakeholders? Not necessarily. We always say protecting our business is the responsibility of the stakeholders. Bank also a stakeholder. Bank also a stakeholder of the business. Right? So therefore, we also take a to the cost of protecting. We also have to take it, put the customer back to business. Okay, why should the stakeholder protect the business? That sounds simple to answer. Do a CB, a cost benefit analysis. The principle is cost benefit analysis. You spend some money it should get a benefit. We discussed it some time back at the projections, cost benefit analysis, and do the projection of balance P&L. When you spend the money, 100 rupees, it should get a benefit more than that. Right? So if the benefits of protecting the business exceed the cost, then protect it. Benefit is should more than the cost, then you can protect it. If the benefit less than the cost, then we have to forego that. We cannot do anything to that business. So the cost benefit is very, very important concept to put our money back to our money to a business, to revive a business. We have to work out this cost benefit analysis. When the customer can do it, earn profit. Most of the instances what we have seen, banks are giving further funds without doing this analysis. So after some time, the new loans given also going bad. That is the position today. So do a cost CBA is a very, very important concept here to do reconstruction. Business turnarounds done well, what would be the favorable impact of the economy? Better business environment is what we are looking for. Better business environment, we are looking for a better business environment. Then the businessman will do businesses, and the businesses are improving, the economy will grow up. The impact, today you can see the business environment is stagnating or not growing, or the entire economy is going down. Then lower cost of credit. We discussed this last time with the working on the cost of credit, how to calculate the cost. Whenever NPS increases, cost is increasing. So when the NPA can be reduced, our credit cost can be reduced. The better utilization of economic resources, scarce resources we have. So better utilization to get economic resources for benefit of the organization, the country. Entrepreneurs will spend time on the business, not oil and the bankers and lenders. Right? So they normally if a customer comes to a default situation, he tries to avoid the bank. He's not answering the calls, he's not visited, he's not there. Try to avoid. So that unpleasant situation can be avoided. The business turnaround can be done well. A better usage of foreign exchange, very rare resource for us. Right. Let's see what are the turnarounds, what are the problems in Sri Lanka. What are the problems in Sri Lanka we cannot encountering to encounter mean that means to do turnarounds. What are the obstacles? Number one, attitude of the banks. Banks in Sri Lanka generally think that restructuring is merely adding an accrued penal interest and dividing it by 60. Sometimes when they are good, they even stretch the repayment period for the balance loan of a couple of years. But at the moment, what restructuring is, we always try to forcing the customer to sign getting for this. Right? Interest component add to the capital. So revalue the assets given to the bank and try to cover the security coverage and continue to be NPE. That's just restructure what we are doing at the moment at the corporate level, most of the banks. Then the attitude of the debtors, borrowers. Debtors at default generally fear the banks and being under pressure, often agree to arrangement that they cannot meet and the problem continues. So we prepare a recovery package and ask the customer to sign for it. So whether it can be implemented or not, we are not bothered. He said we made arrangement, that's all. No. Look at from the customer's point of view. On the customer side, we have to make a recovery package. But here, we pressure the customer and where customer, whether he can agree, he comes to an agreement with, knowingly that he cannot implement that. So problem continues. Third one, faulty managerial focus. The business sector does not understand the turnaround requires a different managerial focus. They forget to concentrate on the cash flow and blocking the financial sources to keep the necessary resources available and continue to think only the customer products and production. So the business management is something very broad. They forget to consider cash flow. Very important part is cash flow. But to get the cash flow positive, several other factors also come to consider. The manager focus is not on that side, but only customer production. Then fourth one, to protection to new debt are sometimes quite rightly reluctant to vary about finding alien business because there's no protection for the subsequent debt capital over the previous days. Now this is very, very crucial point to the bank side. Right? No protection on new debts. If you're granting a new facility, always banks see the customer is defaulted due to willfully. He defaulted willfully. That's our thinking. And therefore, we are looking at the customer as a willful defaulter. Then problem is continuing because we think that our new debts are not protected. So we are not going to grant any further facilities. But this is where the problem is. What are the types of controlling measures we have to take when we are granting a facility, new facility to the customer? One of the options we discussed earlier, appointing a director to the board of directors looking after our interest. Then they cannot manage, the management cannot do businesses according to their requirement. Bank also have a right to look into their business because we are partners of that business. The new management at a risk, new infusion of management skills is almost impossible because new managers would also be held liable for the all past sins of ailing company, including any unpaid strategic use. Hence, many managers are reluctant to take this risk. When we try to change the business management to run the business, they have to continue to be that all past defaults, everything they have to recover. Very simply, if you put it to that, all the managers in the banks, we face this difficulty. Whenever you take over a branch, okay, whenever you take over a branch, you take over all the NPAs of the others, the predecessors who have been earlier granted the facility, you take over that also. Then after you become the manager, that is your responsibility to do the recovery. Impossible because new managers would also be held liable for all past sins. So the manager who took over the branch has to pays for the collecting those default facilities. So it is becoming, even a bank, we find that difficult. So same thing in the business cycle also. So who is going to take over the past sins? Taking the case of certain businesses which has been, the government-owned businesses which have been transferred, like the Tulleria textile industries. Due to it was doing very well, the huge investment, large, about 100 acres, fully complete, very good, what you call technical complex. Tulleria is a complex, not only manufacturing institution. So there it is having quarters, swimming pools, right? So recreation areas, large. Now the Miss Mass Holdings had taken over and doing that as a training center. Now before that, Tulleria was given to Kabul Lanka, foreign Pakistani company, took over to run the business management. To hand over the businesses to Kabul Lanka, the government took all the liabilities, all the credit, what you call bank loans, everything, payable to creditors, everything have been taken away the government and given the business, only the assets. Still, they could not done because our economy was depending on the import economy. So this is, you can see, practically we can see the difficulty of turnaround principles application. So to turnaround principle application, there should be support should be there, the government also to support the other economic activities. Okay. Now, for example, if the value chain and paper corporation to be success, a certain amount of limitation has to be put on the import of vehicles, import of stationery, either increase of the tariffs or completely ban. Normally, you can't do completely ban on the open economy system. So you can put certain control measures, high taxes and all. Likewise, it has to be supported the local business. Then this turnaround principle can be easily applied in the country. Otherwise, suspicious society. Whenever a business failed, society attitudes to business failure is that almost always there has been some misappropriation or fraud by the directors. This perception is difficult to shake off. The bad name in the market is usually one of the biggest obstacles in engineering a complex business turnaround. What do you mean by that? Whenever business is failed, always we put a label, Horakala. Directors are Horakala. That perception is difficult to shake off. So that bad name in the market is the biggest obstacle. A business have a revive කරන්න කොහොමත් බෑ අමාරුයි. හොඳ? මිනිස්සුන්ගේ අවිශ්වාසය perception එක වෙනස් කරන්න අමාරුයි. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මම දකින මගේ analysis එක ඇතුළත. What happened to the golden key? What happened to the golden key? What's the golden key issue? Have you gone through that? Why the golden key has been failed? Very good example for us. If there are certain what do you call me? Certain central bank has been found certain misappropriation of funds, or some funds have been not been correctly accounted. That type of some sort of this they detected. Okay, what happened later? They published that. This misappropriation make as a fraud by the directors and is published. The moment it was published, the depositors got panicked and then they came to withdraw the money. That's the fall of golden key. It can happen any business, any bank. My question is, prior to this central bank disclosing about this situation, any of the customers, depositors have been not paid any interest on the due date, or any of the customers have not paid their deposit whenever they asked for it? Have you come across they had defaulted the customers prior to this instance, prior to this close down? You would have seen. So this is the problem. Now, of course, that mistake they are not doing. I met this director some time back, and this type of things are not should not be published. But last week I saw something. I saw in the Lanka the e-news, I think. The central bank has put some penalties for 3 banks. 2019 July, the largest bank, Bank of Ceylon, penalty of 3 million. Hmm? Then another bank, 1 million. Finance company, 1 million last year. Imposed. Why the reason? They have violated the FIU regulations, financial intention reporting regulations about the money laundering. Okay. Now this type of that didn't actually didn't make a big issue, the 3 million penalty, but if it can be converted by the society, especially the social media people, to create a bad image and that business can be collapsed. Overnight can be collapsed. So very, very carefully you have to handle this. Right? Then those are the issues we are facing business turnarounds or doing the restructuring. To improve our turnaround practice, what are the initiatives we have to take? First one, change the attitude of the bank and other creditors to business recovery as a specialized discipline and encourage the banks to employ skilled workout specialists. That is our job. That's what we are trying to work out this specialist who can understand the issue of turnaround and develop in them the ability to work with other creditors. Skill workout. So, can you remember I showed you Indian scenario, the circular issued by the Reserve Bank of India regarding large corporates, how to, corporate defaulted and transferred NPA of 50 crores or 500 million facilities, and all the bank has to get together and plan out for recovery plan. It's Indian scenario. So we have to develop such type of with other creditors also. That means all the banks must get together about one customer if I have a problem. Because collectively. Secondly, educate, train, and develop special multidisciplinary business recovery professionals. That is, this is talking about us. Right? Multidisciplinary business recovery professionals. You could advise the companies on the strategies regarding revival, restructuring, and turnaround. The banks has developed a specialized team to give support to the customers as and when they want, educate and train this position. Advise the companies on the strategies. So this is a need of the day, today's need of the day with our staff. Educate our staff, train them, develop. Multidisciplinary business recovery as multi-recovery, business recovery professionals. Thirdly, create awareness of the business community that the companies which become sick could be nursed back to health, and that is not always true that the sickness is occurred because cheating or fraud. අර ලේබල් එක හොරා කාලා කියන ලේබල් එක සම්පූර්ණ අයින් කරන්න. ප්‍රොබ්ලම් එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ප්‍රොබ්ලම් එක හදන්න පුළුවන්. Can be nursed. සාත්තු සේවකාවක් කරනවා සේව කරන help ඒක health එක back to normal ගේන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඒකට obstacle එක තමයි අර අපේ තියෙන attitudes. Have new laws that addresses special issues regarding business recovery and establish specialized courts manned by judges who have clear understanding of business turnaround issues and businesses. Recovery process should need to be done through carefully organized education and training. In Sri Lanka, what is the position about the what do you call judicial support to the recovery? We'll discuss next week in detail. In 1990, 13 enactments brought to the parliament to support the banks to expedite recovery from the traditional recovery method to different approaches. such as Debt Recovery Act, Recovery Bank Loan Special Provision Act, Amendment of Mortgage Act, Amendment of Agrarian Service Act, Amendment of uh, some other TR Ordinance. There are some of these. So to what extent we are using this? That's the problem. New laws has been established, but still we are not make using of that because our something wrong with us. So therefore, it is very important. We done through carefully organized education and training. How to use these new laws to recovery of facilities. Create awareness in the business community that lines defining recovery, street-style liquidation are necessarily diffused and impress upon the community that there is need to them to obtain proper understanding of this concept, the day of age. What do you mean by the recovery? What do you mean by restructuring? What is liquidation? Must be educated the communities in general. And also, since there are many emerging issues in the rapidly developing subject, some international standards, norms, and regulations should be studied, proposed, and followed in Sri Lanka. The role of the central bank. Specifically, have to identify international standards about recovery and capital crisis. And also, the large banks specifically. There are 6 large banks in Sri Lanka. They had to develop their staff in these issues. What are the international standards and norms? And what are the regulations? What are the regulations can be applied within our framework? And we can propose to the government to change these regulations through central bank as and when needed. So ongoing basis we have to do this. In 1990, Dr. Nujawada did this role to change this legal system. It played a very big role. So today we need such characters, caliber, to do serve the banking industry. Let us finally remember that good entrepreneurs are very few and as an association. We have very little entrepreneurs and they have access to the nation. Who is an entrepreneur? Who is a businessman? Who is an entrepreneur? Who is a businessman? What's the difference between these? The entrepreneur is a person who take the opportunity of all the risk to convert risk into business. They take the risk and convert risk into business. Businessmen, they are not mostly not going for risk. They try to evade the risk. So the entrepreneurs are the people who are taking challenge to create a new products and services. Very few. It is in the interest of the society to nurture them, to help them if they fall sick. If they find difficulties, putting them back to business. We can name certain people, certain big good entrepreneurs who have fallen and they try to make the opportunity for the business. Take in the case of Harry, Mr. Harry Jawad, Stasas Group. In last, I think the EMP government, most of the public enterprises have been sold. So Harry Jawad bought Insurance Corporation and as well as Distillers Corporation. After Chandrika Bandana Kumartunga's period, there was a case filed and Vasudeva Nanakara and got a judgment that Insurance Corporation has to be sold not according to the what you call rules and regulations, it has to be returned back. So Hari Javadar created the convert the insurance company by that time to a very competitive business organization, compared with the VIP, selling and other insurance companies. What happened? It has to return back to the government according to the order. So what he did, in fall back, he started Continental Insurance, his own insurance company. He's doing very well. That's called entrepreneur. So, such person has to be looked after well. They are the wealth of the organization, the country. Let's develop good hospitals, efficient preventive and curative healthcare systems, and clever doctors in order to do so. Develop good hospitals, banking sector here. Who are we? Bankers. Who are we called for? Call us. We are specialized doctors for certain ailments. Bankers are specialized doctors. Who are the patients comes to us? What is the ailment in the patients of ours? We are specialist treatment for them. So they are having the problem of financial syndrome. So it's our job to make preventive and curative healthcare systems as clever doctors. හරියට කරේ නැත්නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ? එදකම කියන දෙකක්. එදකම හරියට කරොත් ලෙඩා සනීප වෙනවා. එදකම හරියට කරේ නැත්නම් ලෙඩා මැරෙනවා. Okay. In our industry, අපි ගත්තොත් bankers ගත්තොත් we are specialist doctors. අපි දෙන වෙදකම් වැරදුනොත් ලෙඩාට ඉස්සර මැරෙන්නේ ලෙඩා. ඒක අපි තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ. අපේ NPA rate එක වැඩි වෙලා will collapse. So finally remember that. What is the role of the bank? Before start the business, ensure that the business is properly studied. Credit evaluation is really important. Look at the cost structure, industry norms, and acceptable levels. You can put the cost structure. Calculate. Carry out proper due diligence. Avoid over-financing, under-financing. Need-based finance. If the exposure is too large, go for a syndication. If you cannot bear the thing, don't cut down the loan. Go for a syndication. If there are several banks involved, look at the possibility of sharing the security on the equitable proportionate manner. If not, different banks will take different direction in the event of a crisis. This way, the syndicate loan is important. Work out the working capital requirement based on the properly studied operating cycle. Okay, we are talking always about this working capital cycle. Leave room for upward revision facilities for financing growth of businesses.
So the slides are not moving.
Again?
Yeah.
Which is the last slide you got?
Yes, sir. The product's life cycle. That's the one still visible.
Oh, God. Okay, we are at the end of this session. I'll get it done. Okay, before we what the role of the bank rehabilitation of business, what do you call, restructuring process, always keep room for upper division we discussed earlier also. Make provision for compulsory equity build-up, cash retention and dividend restrictions. So whenever you go for restructuring process, dividend restrictions must be adopted and cash retentions, that means cash build-up has to be imposed. Structure the facility taking into account the seasonal fluctuations of the business, need-based finance. Be ready to be partner of the business. And finally, visits are very important to understand the business. Then document vital information for future references. And when you go for inspection, prepare inspection report and keep that in the file for the future references. Keep hierarchy informed about the development, particularly early warning signals. Do not hide the elephants. Whatever you see, any warning symptom, immediately brought in notice of the management. That's an important role. Call for and go through financial statement regularly, particularly the management accounts. They are still good source of information despite potential manipulation due to obvious reasons. Whatever available financial ratios, analyze. Keep an eye on the development of the industry. Anticipate changes in the facility requirement. What are change of the industry? With that change of the industry, what are the facilities needed? For example, industry specifically the machineries and other infrastructures developing, changing. So customers try to support in that new thing, new machineries. To be quick, accommodate requests relating to temporary cash flow issues. Not solving such problem can lead to the permanent losses that will in turn create permanent problems. Short-term cash shortages, we look at for shortages, try to meet the shortages, right? And if the shortages continue, then go for a permanent solution. Ensure that the business always run at the desired capacity level, above the break-even level, without disruption to the production flow and without loss of capacity. Always a business is run at the expected level. At the time of granting the facility, what is the level you expected? See that is there around that level, business is run. So visits are very important. If the client does not have proper controls planning, the BAM may insisting on introducing them. Try to understand the problems as clearly as possible. Avoid generalization regarding reasons such as cash flow problem, liquidity problem, working capital issues, financial problem, etc. There are outcomes. Issues are beneath the problems. This is what we discussed last year. Right? Look at the problem, not the symptom. Cash flow problem is liquid problem. These are symptoms. Look for the in-depth other reasons. If the issues are temporary and easy to resolve, rescheduled facilities will do. If the issues are bigger and nature of business failure, then the more comprehensive approach is required. So analysis is very important to find out what's wrong with the customer. When faced with failure, consider the appropriation of the product restructuring, kill bad products, innovate production, readjust the portfolio. If the customer is doing certain production, not marketable, it's not profitable, ask customer to stop manufacturing that. Restructuring marketing buy arrangements. If you can help the customer, specifically small customers, for the market to sell the product, very important. Process re-engineering and productivity improvement. When the customer at the peak level, re-engineering process has to be taken off. And RL, research and development, product development, and management restructuring. This is on introducing the required management input found to be lacking. Who are the management taking decisions? In the case of good governance issues, believe that the best corporate governance is not always the case. Do not get excited. Strengthen the monitoring process. That's our job. Then declare your concerns and take up directly with the client. Any problem you come across, directly talk to the customer, try to resolve it. Formalize any procedures required to ensure better corporate governance. Probably still better to recover the business, go for it. That's something to cover. Finally, a number of reasons may result company failures. A bank or financial institution should ideally work towards avoidance of failures. That's called remedial management we discussed earlier. While commencing and continuing business relationship and also when faced with the failure. Look at the business. Continuous basis, you monitor business. It is much easier to kill a business to recover the money from the breakup value, but almost all the stakeholders have bound to loss. Therefore, win-win approach is restructuring firm is beneficial to all parties. That's how it should be approached. The banker's approach to managing business relationship play a vital role. As we discussed, four different approaches. While restructuring is a far better solution to all parties, it is riskier in a way because the banks may have to infuse more funding. So new fund, always there's a risk. So our business is taking the risk for a value. The owners must cooperate, giving additional commitments such as instances so that they have to balance solution. This is where finally come to conclusion about the what is business restructuring. Okay, let's go to the other one. Will you have a break? Yeah, we'll have a break and come back, and we'll continue with the other options available for us. We'll go for Let's start with the next option available for recovery. Rehabilitation is the best option. Okay, so we go for rehabilitation if the customer is agreeable for any proposal being by the bank. Also negotiate with the customer, and the collateral available, market is viable. Then we go for rehabilitation. The second option is compromise settlement. Now, compromise settlement is normally we go for where if the market is completely paralyzed, market is not available anymore, so we cannot go ahead anymore. Yes, there's no market, the product cannot be sold. Therefore, but customer is agreeable to come for a settlement, then the collateral assets are available. So we'll go for a method called compromise settlement. Okay, we discussed this last week. That's called compromise settlement or amicable settlement. What is amicable settlement? Steps to control root causes in NPN banks following the conservative approach. Then loans restructure is secondary. Then in adapting innovative means of tracking NPA. There are three steps involved for us for the innovative things, innovative recovery method has to be developed by the banks, right? So today we need these two last two are very important, but still we are following the conservative approaches, right? Let's see. Conservative approaches, bank need to go more cautious in lending loans to sectors that demand huge capital and is prone to be becoming delinquent. Where the large capital is needed, but risk is very high. Large capital is needed, where risk is very high. That's called. They need to follow a conservative approach for loan disbursement, particularly in cases where the repayment tenor is stretched over a long period of time. Especially large facilities need a long term to repayment period is very long. So we follow the conservative approach for recovery. Then restructure secondary is we discussed little while ago, same thing. Financial institution must take necessary action right from the time of loan request rate for the borrowers. This means they must identify all possible modes of repayment. All possible modes of repayment and ensure that installments and equated monthly installments are paid in time. That means the cash flow based recovery. Right? They must not wait for the time until the loans become delinquent and have a be restructured in the end. Right? That is the second steps of involvement. Third one is bearing in mind every growing and unstoppable rise in NPA, it is high time bank and financial institutions develop innovative ways to treat them. Today we are facing this situation. Now we are seeing our NPA rates in the banks are increasing. Right? So there is an immediate need to use advanced tools where banks can have detailed insight on the customer behavior and their repaying capacity to make effective lending decisions. That is in detail analysis needed of the customer or the borrower. And we have to take innovative things, new things to go for recovery. They must also find ways to contact borrowers for recovering loan installment in case of a failures and take legal action whenever required. That is the final option available for the banker. Adopting innovative means tracking of in PA. Non-performing assets are great threat to not only the banks but the country's economy as a whole. We discussed last week how our NPA becoming a national problem because the NPAs are increasing. Now cost of funds are increasing. When the cost of fund increase, our interest rates are going up. When the interest rates are going up, inflation is increasing. It is affecting the economy. Therefore, it is very important to control the NPA to stabilize the economy. The nation's progress depends highly on the macroeconomic stability, which can only be attained when the NPA in banks remain in control. This is the factor of talking about the central bank now very, very serious about this matter. And macroeconomic stability of the country can be attained if you control of NPAs. NPA increasing, macroeconomic stability is getting threatened. Not much should be expected from the government to come to rescue the bank. Right? So normally what happened, if when the banking sector is affected, collapsed, the government comes to rescue the bank. Sometime back you can remember, for 2008, in America, in the recession, number of banks were collapsed. In America, number of big banks were collapsed. When the President Barack Obama made a request, put a paper to the Senate to release $600 million to rescue these banks. Senate refused. Senate didn't allow that. Because Senate says it is not the government problem, it is public money. Private banks has to look after their own funds. So you can see that situation for us also. The government is not coming to rescue the bank in the future. Therefore, now we can see the private sector, for finance companies, one after the other getting collapsed. Luckily, insurance has been built up. Deposit insurance scheme has been built up, and out of a certain amount has been paid, up to 300,000 settled. Right? So it is not a matter to find out the ways to settle this. Right? So it is becoming problem to entire country. Instead, they must themselves be empowered by taking corrective steps, placing effective recovery policies on time and way before they are buckled. Therefore, banks has to prepare certain steps specifically to meet this NPA if something happens, to build up what you call assets. It is what the Basel III regulations are giving more capital increase, buffer capital to be increased because any failure due to the NPA level increase in NPA, then it can be absorbed by the buffer capital. Right? That's what at the moment Basel regulations have applied. Basel III have been given this chance to banks. So banks can go further beyond that, building up a insurance money in the case of a default. What is compromise settlement? Referred to a negotiated settlement where a borrower offers to pay and the bank agrees to accept in full final settlement of its dues, an amount less than the total amount due to the bank under the relative loan contract. Simply, compromise settlement means the borrower offers a certain amount to pay and the bank agrees to accept it and completely settle its dues. Right? So it is less than, or sometimes more often it is less than the amount receivable. Balance has to be write it off and come to a settlement to settle the customer's dues. And it's is much better because customer's problem has there is no non-payment can be settled and customer liability can be settled. In the other hand, bank's liability on NPA also we can reduce it. So compromise settlement, one of the tools the banks apply whenever the borrower offers to pay or offers an asset to settle. Right? More often, they doesn't have cash to pay. They come for a settlement mostly with giving an asset to the bank. So bank will buy that asset on the market value and try to settle the amount due on the contract. This settlement invariably involves certain sacrifice by the bank by the way of write-off and or waive of a portion of its dues on one-time basis. So ultimately, when it comes to compromise settlement, the balance portion has to be written off and interest has to be waived off. The policy recognizes that it is not possible to lay down precise guidelines which can be followed uniformly in case of compromise offers. Each offer is unique and context of circumstances necessitating consideration as the recovery option. So it varies. Customer to customer option can be varied. Right. So before I go in detail, to explain about compromise settlement, how the banks have been applied this, some examples and experiences of us. There are a number of instances banks have been offered this to customers and made settlements. The large scale settlement we can remember is happened in 1972. In 1972, Mrs. Sirma Bandanayaka's government nationalized, bought the Land Reclamation Act and nationalized all the estates in the country. So no one can have assets, that means estates, lands more than 50 acres. Lands over the 50 acres were taken over by the government. At the time this was done by 1972, Mrs. Bandanayaka, this government, British companies were managing all the estates. Stewart's, George Stewart's, John, George Backwoods, Somerville and Company, Browns, likewise, almost about 50 or 60 companies were managing estates in the country. Tea estate, rubber estate, or coconut estate, all are managed by, owned by the British companies and managed in Sri Lanka by the British companies. Yeah, management agencies. Walker and Greek are some of these companies. In 1972, when the government nationalized or took over all the estates, right, and established Janata Estate Development Board, Janavasava. Janata Establishment Board was developed, and under that took all the estates and put it. Now, what happened to the businesses and the liabilities of these companies? Right? So most of the companies could not go ahead because their main businesses were these estate agencies. When the estates were taken over the government, their main business was collapsed. Then in 72, there are some businesses, some companies, they try to divert their businesses into some other businesses, try to survive. Some are success, some are failed. Right? So what happened to the banks who have granted facilities to these companies? They could not recover the loans given to these banks, these companies. We'll take it to two cases. One is the Walkers. Walkers was estate agent, managing agent of the estates island-wide, and they have branch jewelers in even now in Nuvarelia, Vandaravela. If you go out of the country, They are still the workers' buildings are there, right? So they were managing with another company, right? Workers. In their they could not continue the business. Business was collapsed, and they come to a settlement with the bank to to write off the dues to the bank and offered their assets to the banks. Now, the estate, which is the assets in the estates were taken over the government, but any asset outside the estate were not including that taking overs. Outside the premises, it's not there. Right? For example, our workers had certain buildings and properties were outside the estate, like Gaul and Nuwarelia, the Nuwarelia town itself. Likewise, some of the places they had. Then what happened? They try to settle. They could not settle. They try to sell their assets. There are certain bungalows at Guildford Crescent, Columbus 7, which are given for their company officials, and building at Fort, represent State Bank of India building, belongs to them. They try to sell part of this and to settle their facilities. So the workers they had in Kolpiti about 2-acre land, which is run by their garage at the petrol shed. So they offered that property. The Bank of Ceylon took half of that property, purchased, and settled their outstanding bills. And they put up the building, Kolpiti building, or they call Merchant Tower, BOC Merchant Tower, the Kolpiti. It's one of the properties bought for the workers. Later on, workers, what they did, they started importing vehicles. That is their agent for Morrison, Leyland, British Leyland vehicles. Right? And also they were doing marine engineering, ship repairing, and they had a large, they were about 15-acre land. The workshop was at the Kotahena, next to Ceylon Tobacco Company. Right? In Jayajardhana government took over in 1979-77. Open economy policy was introduced. In the open economy policy, Japanese vehicles invaded the country and this British vehicles market was collapsed. So the workers' business was collapsed. Further, they were now, main businesses all collapsed and they were doing ship repairing. Only one business. Then the Dockyard Limited has established by the Port Authority and the government and took over the ship building a ship repairing part. They lost that business also. So finally, they had to do the settlement. They had to close down all the businesses. They offered these buildings to the Bank of Ceylon and other banks, and we bought and settled part of their capital. And also this thing, interest have been waived off. Similarly, Browns also did the same thing. Right? When out of the estate, Browns had some estate bungalows at Bindunueva, at Bindunueva Bandaravilla, Haputele, Nuwarelia Duff House, Badul Spring Valley. Likewise, about 6 or then Upper Glen, Lower Glen at Talawakale, Indula. All estate bungalows were there. The Bank of Ceylon, what did they purchased all these bungalows and converted to and settled their dues. They bought their premises at Imbangwala Junction, large garage, and also some buildings, properties at Dali Road also. Right? So the Bank of Ceylon purchased these buildings and converted those into holiday homes. Even now, those holiday homes are run by the Sea Bank Holiday Resort Private Limited, managed by them, for the employees as well as outsiders. Holiday homes are. And also the large asset that also at Imbangwala Junction, he had a large property, and bank still wanted to put up a 22-story building there. But in 1983 riots, so all the plans had to be dropped. It was there over 10 or 15 years. Now recently, it was sold to Apico. Apico supermarket was established there. So we recovered our money. So this is few examples. It is not parade. It is amicably come to settlement with the customer. Customer will offer their properties or assets. The bank will buy those assets on the market value and set off all the dues. Thereafter, nothing will be remaining in the books. Then thereafter, they can start their businesses only. Now, Browns, after that, they started their own, and now they are doing businesses. Some of the agencies and some imports they are doing. So, what we cleared the balance sheets for them to run the businesses and start new businesses. So, the amicable settlement is one of the good concept. If the customer having an asset, also it has a what you call commercial value for the bank may purchase this. Right? That's called compromise settlements. Okay, the time of compromise as important aspect is settlement proposals and the concept of opportunity cost of funds. Right? So opportunity cost of funds means if you drag in the facility as for a longer time, we are losing the income on that loan. Therefore, the opportunity cost can be reduced come to a settlement like this. The opportunity cost of funds is vice versa, that of funds which could come in hand at later period should be calculated to establish comparatively advanced now or later. Right? So if you recover now, you can reduce the opportunity cost than keeping for tomorrow. That's called opportunity cost. Assessing compromise proposal basis net present value will give a pragmatic dimension to approach and recovery NPA, especially suit for file accounts. So we apply a technique called NPV, net present value, NPV technique, to work out what is present value of a property, then it is keeping there for longer. Considering the matter in all its amplitude, ranging from absolute need to reduce NPAs, so which will reduce our NPAs in long term. Indian Banks Association, IBA, with their circular letter, informed the Reserve Bank of India, advised the bank that they may intend to compromise settlement with willful defaulters and fraudulent borrowers without prejudice in the criminal case against the borrower. This is Indian scenario. India, Central Bank, Indian Reserve Bank, they allow the banks to go for compromise settlement with willful defaulters and fraudulent borrowers. Right? And also without prejudice to criminal case against the borrower. That means come to settlement is not final in India. So they keep room for file further action against the customer. Recovery one side, right? And also fraudulent transaction, they can file a criminal case. And that such cases of compromise settlement should be vetted by management committee board of respective banks has been decided. Right. So that is Indian scenario. It is allowed banks to go for compromise settlement without prejudice to file action for their criminal cases, not civil. Once NPA non-performing asset unit is evaluated and found that it cannot be reviewed, it becomes incumbent on the branch to initiate recovery proceedings. Right? That means if a loan found cannot be revived, that cannot continue. The loan cannot be continued. The customer cannot be rehabilitated. Specifically, we mentioned where the customer's business is collapsed. No more, that business cannot be continued anymore. So we have to come for incumbent on the branch to initiate recovery proceedings. There's no way of recovery. Since money has got time value, whatever recovery means, branch adoption should result in a quick repayment. So whatever recovered now will increase the cash flow of the bank and it will reduce NPA. So it has a long-term benefit. As a recovery means, the bank can either go to a court paying for a decree or a negotiate with the customer for a compromise settlement. Either a bank can come to settlement personally, or they can file action in the courts, and then we can come for a compromise settlement in the courts. Either way, we can do it. We file action in the courts. If the customer comes for a settlement in the courts, let's go for a settlement. Right? Then court also may agree out of the court proceedings, the settlement can be arranged. In general, the experience that filing suits and the recovery of dues of bank through the process of courts is a cumbersome, expensive, and time-consuming. You know that filing action in the courts is a cumbersome that take about 5-6 years to give a settlement, and during the period we have to spend on legal expenses and time consuming. Therefore, it's better go for a settlement. And the compromise in the bank laws means agreeing to borrower's request of accepting part of the outstanding dues in the books of the banks as a full and final payment, or allowing for the non-compliance of the terms of loan. After analyzing the alternative courses of action, genuineness and the capacity of the borrower is to repay. If the customer has no way of repayment, there's no income for the customer to repay, only assets available, so we can request the customer to sell the assets and repay the loan. That's compromise settlement. So bank will purchase assets in the market value if bank have a commercial value. There are certain instances I came across certain properties belongs to customers. The bank has bought that properties and converted that properties into bank branches. Some of the bank apply this principle. So that's how ease the customer from the liabilities. It is also called voluntary debt reduction or scaling down of dues. So these two more things we are talking about. Voluntary debt reduction. Voluntary reduction is the debt by both the parties. Loan compromise helps the banks to recover dues with least passage of time and minimize further the loss of earning opportunities. Right? It's the shortest time bank can apply and with a low cost. The recovery cost is very, very much low when it comes to compromise settlement. It's called one-time settlement or OTS. One-time settlement or OTS is a type of compromise settlement executed by the banks in order to recover non-performing assets. OTS is a scheme where the borrower, the one who had defaulted, proposes to settle all the dues at once, and the banks agree to accept an amount lesser than what the original due. Full amount, that means customers' outstanding full balance will be settled, comes to called one-time settlement. One-time settlement is usually done when the borrower cannot repay the loan and the interest accrues become more than the principal amount. Right? So accrued interest is greater than the loan amount, and the loan amount there's no cash flow for the customer to pay, so you can negotiate for a one-time settlement. What are strategies of NPA strategies? The preventive strategies, the resolution strategies. We discussed earlier the preventive is before it comes to NPA, what should be done. The step is screening, the surveillance, and a loan review, macro level, micro level. Right? This is prevention. So we discussed it last week about this prevention. We call this a remedy management. Remedy situation. We screen the situation. And the surveillance, what are the action we can have surveillance, and review the facility to continue or not. Resolution means to recovery action. Now we are in processing talking about this resolution. It can be legal, it can be non-legal. Legal action means going to courts. Non-legal in other than that, what can do? So loan workout, amicable settlement, compromise settlement for the others. What we discussed now, loan workout is part of the rehabilitation. Then asset realization, settlement, and other actions. So these are strategies available. So I gave this one in a different format with you. What are the steps involved in loan recovery procedure? So the compromise settlement, normally we apply whenever we need to, we have a customer having assets. And customers having assets, also he's offering those assets for a settlement. Customer is having assets and he's offering those assets for a settlement. That's called a compromise settlement. Right? The second option available for us is the compromise settlement. Right. What's the third option available? The other option is going for it is not there. I have not given any handout for this. This comes to liquidating of asset securities. Okay. Liquidating of securities, the next option available. That means customer is not viable, market is not viable, but collateral is viable. Assets are available. Customer is not viable coming forward. Now, when it comes to this stage, we call exit strategy. Rehabilitation, compromise settlement. Both are we call as strategies with the customer. The customer agreed to do that. If the customer not coming for any settlement, we may get rid of the customer. That's called exit strategy. So if to exit strategy, we apply first is the first to whatever collateral given to the bank, we'll do the recovery. We'll do the recovery. So what are the collaterals we are getting? Physical collaterals, non-physical collaterals. Tangible collaterals, non-tangible collaterals. Now let us go through recovery of facilities with intangible or intangible collaterals, which is not physically appearing. Recovery procedure. Right. Now, whenever customer is defaulted, normally what is the procedure to do the recovery? You send reminders. You try to contact first. After 90 days is becoming due, we discussed earlier, is important. For the first day of recovery, we discussed. The first installment is defaulted. Before the 90 days, third installment defaulted, we try to recover without transferring the NPA. That's the most effective recovery without transferring NPA. Now, what are the collateral is now we apply for that one is start with that. Okay. What are the collaterals we take for the customer? We'll start with cash securities. What's a cash security? Cash security means the customer having deposits in the bank. Savings balances, fixed deposits, NRFC. These if we are granting any facility against these deposits in the bank, it's called cash security. It's called cash security. Why? At any moment, it can convert into cash. Any moment, given time, the defaulted, we can liquidate the, or we call the terminology uplift the deposit and recover the money. Okay, what's the procedure? If the customer defaulted, we send reminder, right? And second reminder, and registered for third reminder. If the customer not coming for a settlement, we send finally, we have the option to, the third reminder we say, we liquidate the asset, uplift the asset. So the cash security, FD, savings, NRFC balances. Very simple. What is the balance available? Now, normally we got 90% of the value of the security. So, entire amount we can recover with the interest without being going for third month, because in the for more than 3 months or more than one due for more than 3 months, the interest will be accumulated and interest may be more than the capital amount. In your recovery is a problem. In recovery becoming a problem. Therefore, early as possible, we have to take action to recover. Right? So recovery, uplift the facility and collect our dues, balance remaining in the account. So only install outstanding amount, recover, and allow it to be balanced to be in the account for let the customer take the money they told. So we have the right to collect the money. Why? We have got the letter of set off. We took the document letter of set off, which can be implemented for recovery. Set off means set off anytime, authority given by the customer to the bank. So we apply the letter of set off and recover the dues, uplift the loan facility, close the balances. You don't need to close the account, only in the case of FTs, we close the account. Savings and NRC balances, we close the loan account by recovering balance outstanding in the account and settle off. That's a first intangible security. Second intangible security is the near cash. We call this as a near cash. What is near cash? That it takes little time to convert into cash, because this is those securities are not in the bank, not with the bank. It is outside the bank, right? Certain products, securities, it is not in the bank, it is outside the bank. So it will take little time for realization. That's why I call near cash. What are those items? Company shares, debentures, unit trust, treasury bills. All these are called as near cash. Right? Company shares, debentures, unit trust, treasury bills. These are called near cash. It will take little time to settle because it is the deposit is with somewhere else. So we have to claim from them or adapt a market strategy to sell. Right. Similarly, you send the reminders before 90 days. So again, to remind you, cash securities has to be recovered before it is going to within 90 days. Because after 90 days, automatically goes to NPA. So once you go to NPA, recovery is not possible. So we cannot transfer any facility which have a cash security into NPA. Therefore, before 90 days, we have to recover. Similarly, near cash also, within 90 days, we have to recover. We cannot allow near cash facilities to go into NPA. What is the procedure? Company shares? Yes. Your document you have taken to sell the shares in the market. Normally, we are not accepting private limited companies' shares. Only public limited company shares, they are quoted in the security exchange. So only we accept quoted shares as a security. Unquoted shares, private limited company shares, we are not accepting as security. Only quoted shares, which is have a considered security exchange. So what is the first step? You got some documents. So convert those shares ownership into the bank's name. You got the power of attorney. You got the what you call transfer documents to the transfer and register the security exchange on our name, and then we can sell it in the security exchange all the company shares, which is mortgage to the bank, and recover our money. That's the steps. Okay. Next, treasury bonds, treasury bills, same procedure. Then unit trust, same procedure. Relevant authority, you send the papers, transfer into our name because you got the power of attorney, and the transfer document signed by the customer, transfer into our name, and sell by publicly. Right? Sell and recover. Okay. So the second one is recovery of cash security, near cash securities. Next intangible collateral is uh, life insurance policies. Life insurance policies also very easy to recover a method. Now, if a life insurance policy, we have to get assignment in the bank name. It should be registered. That there are two ways of getting a life insurance policy. Either it can be assigned or it can be mortgage. Under Mortgage Act, it provides it can be mortgage. But banks are not going for mortgage. Why? It is costly. Stamp duty is very high. Therefore, we go for the assignments. So it has to be assigned and registered at the relevant insurance company to our what do you call endorse in our name. You cannot transfer. Sometimes you may find examinations write incorrect meaning. That means insurance policy has to be taken jointly at the bank and the customer. No, it is not correct. Bank is not going to be a party to that insurance policy because bank has an insurable interest, but bank doesn't want to become the owner of that insurance policy. Okay, therefore we take an assignment. It is endorsed in the bank's favor. Right? If you take life insurance policy, it is assignment. Life insurance policy take an assignment over the bank name. So, right? Okay. If the customer defaulted facility given against life insurance policy, simple 3 steps. First step, assignment, original assignment, and letter requesting. Letter requesting to send the check to the bank. Right? Where customer defaulted, send the check to the bank. And these 2 documents to be submitted to the insurance company. Original assignment and the letter request to submit the money. So insurance company, without any inquiry or anything, on the request of the bank, cancel the insurance policy, and send the surrender value available in that insurance. Keep in mind, what the amount we are getting, the surrender value as at that date will be sent by a check to the bank. So we credit to the loan account or the overdraft account and recover our money. Balance will remain to the customer. Okay, so these are the intangible assets, how to liquidate, right, in the case of a default. Next step is recovery of facilities where tangible assets are mortgaged to the bank. Tangible assets. What are tangible assets? It can be a movable or it can be immovable. Can be a movable or it can be immovable. What are movable assets? Stock in trade, machinery, motor vehicles. Stock in trade, machinery, and motor vehicles. These are the 3 of one type. Other one is immovable properties. Right? All these has to be taken as mortgages. All right? You have to take as a mortgage. When you take as a mortgage, we have a mortgage title called mortgage title. Right? So we can enforce the mortgage title to sell that in a public auction and recover. So that procedure is called parade. Okay, so let us discuss parade next week. I'll send the parade, what is the parade procedure, and what are the what are assets we can go for parade, and other legal actions available. Final session will be next week. We'll finally discuss that matter and finish it off. Okay, so recovery procedure. Up to now, I discussed what are the recovery for non-performing advances. We are come for a rehabilitation. We come for compromise settlement process. Then liquidating the assets. Whatever assets we discussed first part, intangible assets, deposits, non-cash items, cash item, non-cash items, and what do you call insurance policies, life insurance policies. Okay, clear? Okay, so next week morning we'll discuss the what do you call parade procedure and try to how to recover the apply the parade. What are the important factors to be looked into the parade? And then next final option is going for legal action. So what are the legal action available to recovery? What are the legal structure? What are the courts where can go for file action? And then what is the procedure for filing action? So we'll discuss that next week. Okay, right. So that's all for today. I arranged for you. Any questions? Yeah. Anything to be clarified? How is the procedure of already handed over the project report? Well, I handed over the project reports. Okay. You handed over, no? Right, okay. Rasika, okay. Right. Those are not handed over, we discuss it. Menaka. This time we have to we have to have a viva. Therefore, it is important your project report, how you got information, what the procedure. So individually I'll discuss in a viva, and because it's a need important. I think this time there are certain changes in the examination also. What I heard yesterday, Nilak was telling about the structure of the paper was changed little. Earlier we were planning with the new syllabus to have two papers, each have 3 hours papers. 3 hours, 2 papers with 8 questions each. You have to answer for 5 questions. But I think now the management has decided to change first paper to 2-hour paper, 50 marks. 50 marks. And second paper will 8 questions, 5 questions to be answered as earlier decided, and which will be 100 marks are given to that. So the first question is always ratio analysis, interpretation of ratios. It carries 30 marks. So it was 28, it has increased to 30 marks. So the second question is 20 marks. Either Dr. Loganathan's capital investment techniques, right? Either you can select capital investment techniques, that is NPV, IRR, payback period, those techniques. Or you can select accounting techniques for bank lending decisions, which includes projections, cash flow projections, uh, discuss break-even analysis, right? Cash fund flow analysis. Out of this, one question will be asked. So we try to read because the first time we are doing this type of papers, I try to do the easy way of writing answers, and not complex workouts. Okay, right. The second part, last question will be recovery management. What we discuss is within 4 days with the next week. Out of which one question will be on the theory, other question will be on practice, application-wise. That's how the structure is going to be. So anything you need to be clarified, you can ask next week. I'm ready. And here can discuss with us any further information. Okay, because it's little more time regarding the examination papers. There are two components of the examination, as you know: open books examination, closed books examination. Now you already completed open book examination. That is project report and assignment. That's all we have completed. Now it's remaining closed book examination. That is read by heart and write the answers. That's the two papers I discussed. Right. When you answer any questions, read the question very carefully. What the question asks for. Most of these is what we found. Some students, some candidates, not understood the question clearly. They try to write what they know, not relation to the question, and you won't get marks. Secondly, when you ask to describe, you detail it. When you ask to briefly, then go for point form. Right? How it should be written. And examination, most of the candidates, they by heart the entire note. Whenever question asked, they try to write entire notes into that, not the relevant passage or relevant part. So මේකට අපි කියනවා යුනිවර්සිටි එකේදී ඔය එක්සැමිනේෂන් ස්ටයිල් එකට කියනවා අඹ ගහට පොළු ගහන න්‍යාය කියලා. අඹ ගහට පොල්ලක් ගැහුවොත් අත්තේ වැදිලා ගෙඩියක් පැටීමේ සම්භාවිතාවයක් ඇත. අඹ ගහට පොල්ලක් ගැහුවොත් අත්තේ වැදිලා හරි අත්ත හැලෙලා වැටෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අඹ ගහට ගල් ගැහුවොත් හරියට අඹ වල්ලට වැදුනොත් තමයි අඹ ගෙඩි කඩා ගන්න පුළුවන්. The answer should be specific. අර එහෙමෙන් ගිහලා වනල දැම්මට උත්තර ගන්න බෑ. So this is a professional exam. මතක තියාගන්න. අපිට කලින් වල මේ syllabus එක change කරන්න හේතුවත් that we have not professionally performed in your banks. So the CEOs have been complaining about we have not performed, although they have in the certificate, diplomas and certificates. So that's our concern, to upgrade the policy. It's one only. So the knowledge is very important. Examination is secondary. But your part is other way, no? So your examination is not necessary. Only the certificate you need it, not the knowledge. But we look into inculcate your knowledge. Okay, so let's see next week the balance part of recovery, the litigation procedures, the parade procedure. Okay, so thank you very much. Let's see you later. Communication, you can contact me anytime. I am ready to available to help you for any clarification. Okay, bye.